Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to another live homework help with Terra. 1 second as I'm getting a call. All right. How is everyone? Welcome to the VOD. If you're new, this chat is a little large now, isn't it? Chat box, let's make that a little... Oh, whoops. Didn't mean to make it that small. Make that a little smaller and maybe at the bottom of the screen. That's good. Okay. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. Today we're going to be doing some more SAT questions while we wait for people to submit their homework questions if anyone has any. And currently have none. So we will keep an eye out on that. So if you have any homework help questions, feel free to submit them. Got some good tunes, good vibes, and good help. So the function f is defined by f of x is equal to 8x. So f of x is equal to 8x. What is the value, for what value of x does f of x equal 72? So if we set the right hand side 8x equal to 72 and solve for x by dividing by 8 on both sides, you get that x is then equal to 9. So your answer would then be B. If there are no questions about that one, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. For the linear function f, b is a constant and f of 7 equals 28. What is the value of b? So again, similarly, the notation f of 7 indicates that the value of f when x equals 7 is 28. So we would just replace these things accordingly. F of x would become 28 and x would become 7 plus b. So we would solve for b. 4 times 7 is 28 plus b. 28 is equal to 28 plus b. And you might know that this would result in b being equal to just 0. B is equal to 0. There are no questions about that. We'll move on to the next one. By the way, I'm Christopher. I'm the founder and a tutor at Terra Tutoring. So if you're looking for any tutoring help in SAT, in algebra, geometry, physics, chemistry, reading, writing, a variety of subjects, including computer science. If you're looking for any help in any of those, feel free to ask about our website. So next we'll tackle, oh, we already did tackle this problem actually, yesterday. Tackled this problem. We tackled this problem, I believe. And we tackled this problem. Oh, we got further than I remember. We did this problem. We did this problem. Alright, this problem we did not do yesterday. So 1 second here while I set an alarm to remind myself I have something to do in an hour. Unfortunately, I forgot about that before I started the stream, otherwise I probably wouldn't have, but it's okay. So the graph of the equation ax plus ky, ax plus ky is equal to 6 is a line in the xy plane where a and k are constants. If the line contains the points -2, -6, and 0, -3, what is the value of k? So we could do this a few ways. We could put it in the form of y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, or, 1 second. Let me refresh my memory on the standard form of linear equations. Let me turn down the music a little bit while we're doing that. So let's put this into slope-intercept form first. Subtract ax from both sides. We get that ky is equal to 6 minus ax, and that y is then equal to, divide everything by k, 6 over k minus ax. And if we want this in slope-intercept form, we could rewrite it as y is equal to negative ax, or rather ax we forgot to divide by k, or we could do a over k times x plus 6 over k. From there, we can solve for a over k, the slope, or negative a over k. We can solve for the slope by taking the 2 points and solving accordingly. So rise over run is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what we'll want to do is choose our y2, x2 to be whatever, and the y1 to x1 to be the other one. So we'll just choose 0, negative 3 to be y2. So negative 3 minus negative 2 over 0 minus negative 6. There's double negatives become positive, so negative 3 plus 2 over 0 plus 6 becomes negative 1 over 6. So a over k, negative a over k, is equal to negative 1 over 6. Our slope m is negative 1/6. And then we can substitute y is equal to negative 1/6 x plus 6 over k, and substitute 2 points, or 1 point rather, for x and y. So we can choose 0, negative 3, or we can choose negative 2, negative 6. I think it's easier to work with 0, negative 3. So let's try that. We'll say x is equal to 0 and y is equal to negative 3. So we'll rewrite this as negative 3 is equal to negative 1/6 times 0 plus 6 over k. This part, negative 1/6 times 0, becomes 0. So we're just left with negative 3 is equal to 6 over k. Multiply by k on both sides gives us negative 3k is equal to 6. And dividing by negative 3 on both sides gives us that k is equal to negative 2. Let me double check the file request folder to make sure no one has requested any homework help. Looks like no one's requested any homework help just yet, but if you upload your homework questions in the link in the about section or the description, we will get to those as soon as possible. And if for some reason I miss it, feel free to leave a chat and let me know that I missed it, okay? So negative 2 would be the correct response in this case. So let's recap. The basic idea is to first put this into slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Realize that you can solve for the slope by taking 2 points, doing, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then we have a over k. We can just substitute a over k for negative 1/6. or rather negative a over k for negative 1/6. And then we can substitute 2 points, which we chose, or 1 point, 2 coordinates, into our incomplete slope-intercept form and solve for k. If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next problem. Where are we? Yes. Next question. Line L is defined by 3y plus 12x equals 5. Line N is perpendicular to line L in the xy plane. What is the slope of N? So first things first, we want to put this standard form of a linear equation into slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So our first step is to turn 3y plus 12x equals 5. We need to convert that into slope-intercept form. So first, let's subtract 12x from both sides. You get 3y is equal to 5 minus 12x. Or we could rewrite that as y is equal to negative 12x plus 5. And then, 3y rather. And then we want to divide by 3 on both sides. So we can divide everything by 3 to get that y is equal to negative 4x plus 5 over 3. From there, we want to take this slope and do what I like to call flip and flip. So you flip the sign and then you flip the number, the slope, or rather the magnitude of the slope. So first, negative becomes positive, and we're flipping this, so write it as 4 over 1 and flip the numerator and denominator. This is your slope of the perpendicular line. Any line that is perpendicular to some line in slope-intercept form, you just take the slope, flip the sign, flip the fraction, and that is your slope. So positive 1/4 is the correct answer. You could rewrite it as 0.25 if you wanted, and you'd still get full credit. And you don't need the positive sign to be correct. That was just emphasis for the fact that we flip the sign here. So it's an imaginary plus sign. You don't have to write it. And I don't encourage you to necessarily write a plus sign there. Okay, if there are no questions on this, we'll move on to the next set of the next question. So in the given system of equations, p is a constant. If the system has no solution, what is the value of p? Recall that a system has no solution when you get something nonsensical, when you get something like 3 is equal to 2, something that just isn't true and doesn't make sense. So if we can reduce the system to something that doesn't make sense, then we have a system that has no solution. Another way to identify if a system has no solution is if you have two slope interforms and the slope is exactly the same where the rest is not. So the slopes are the same, but the b values are not. And that's like a sideways equal sign or not equal sign. So when the b is different and the m are the same, you'll have no solution. But let's work with the first way of identifying that these are not equal to each other. Or sorry, that the system has no solution. So first, let's see what we could do. Combine like terms in the top one. So 3.5y minus 1/4 x is equal to 2/3 minus 3.5y. So we could combine like terms. So add 3.5y to both sides, or not 3.5, but 3 halves. And then we get 6 over 2y minus 1/4 x is equal to 2/3. This becomes 3y minus 1/4 x equals 2/3. 6 divided by 2 is simply 3. From there, let's see what we could do. We could solve for one variable and substitute it in the other. So let's solve for x. So add 1/4 x to both sides, 3y, let me write it this way, plus 1/4 x on both sides. We get that 3y is equal to 2/3 plus 1/4 x. Subtracting 2/3 from both sides, we get that 3y minus 2/3 is equal to 1/4 x. Last step, of course, is just to multiply by 4, and I'll write this in purple, multiply by 4 on both sides. 4 times whatever's inside the parentheses. So we get 12y minus 8/3 is equal to x. And then we can substitute that in our bottom equation. So 1/2 times everything that we got over here, 12y minus 8/3 plus 3/2 is equal to py plus 9/2. So then, let's distribute this 1/2. 6y minus 1/2 times 8/3. So minus 8/3 times 1/2 plus 3/2 is equal to py plus, and here we have 9/2. So we got 6y, multiply straight across, minus 8/6 plus 3/2. Or, to simplify our lives, we could do it this way. We would reduce the fraction to this anyway, but 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we could write this as 4/3 plus 3/2 is equal to py plus 9/2. Last step, combine these terms to get 6y minus 1/2 is equal to py plus 9/2. Recall that you have a system with no solution if you get something of the result like, say, negative 1/2 plus, or not plus, but is equal to 9/2. Something that isn't true, that doesn't make sense. So we'll get that case if we set p equal to 6. Because then 6y minus 1/2 is equal to 6y plus 9/2. And we can subtract 6y from both sides to get that negative 1/2 is equal to 9/2. So if we set p equal to 6, we will get that this has no solutions. So p is therefore equal to 6. If there are any questions about that, feel free to leave them in the chat and I will check them out. In the meantime, I'm checking that we have no homework submissions, and we do not. So we'll move on to the next question. A window repair specialist charges $220 for the first 2 hours of repair, plus an hourly fee for each additional hour. The total cost for 5 hours of repair is $400. Which function f gives the total cost in dollars for x hours of repair, where x is greater than or equal to 2? So first, we want to set up an equation. 220 plus, and we said that x is the number of hours, so some rate, which we'll call p, x, is then equal to, the total cost for $400 is the total cost for 5 hours of repair is $400. So we can actually write this, replace x with 5. So 5p, where p is the rate that we're charging per hour, is equal to 400. How do we know to set it up this way? Well, we start with the initial cost of 220. And then we know that they're charging some hourly rate, an hourly fee for each additional hour as specified in the problem. For 5 hours of repair, this is where we plug in. Sorry, this is actually incorrect. We have to replace it with 5 minus 2, with 3. 5 minus 2, which is just 3. Reason being is 3p is equal to 400. We're only being charged on an hourly basis for every hour after the first 2 hours. So 220, this accounts for the first 2 hours. First 2 hours. then this 3p accounts for the last, that looks like I wrote something else. Last 3 hours. So then to solve for p, we're going to solve algebraically. Subtracting 220 from both sides, we get that 3p is equal to 180, and therefore p is equal to 60. So, which function f gives the cost in dollars for x hours of repair where x is greater than or equal to 2? We can set up a linear function where p is our slope. So f of x is equal to 60x plus the initial cost of $220. And this would be our answer, which corresponds to letter choice B. But that's not quite correct. Let's see what we did wrong. Ah, yes. So this is 60 is the rate after we have done 2 hours of initial charge. So basically what we have to do is account for that initial charge, because what I'm wondering is why, hold on. Alright, so the way that we would solve this is setting up an equation that y is equal to 60x, and we can represent, oh, this is a difficult question. This is a 3 difficulty question. So interesting. This is a very interesting question. So I'm trying to see how I can solve this in my own terms. Well, what we can do is divide 220 by 2, because this is the work for 2 hours. So that means that we're getting charged 110 an hour for the first 2 hours. If we subtract from that our hourly rate, 110 minus 60, we get that we're getting charged an additional 50 per hour. An additional 50 per hour for the first 2 hours. So that means that in total we're going to get charged an additional $100, because 50 per hour times 2 hours is 100. We're getting charged an additional 100 for those first 2 hours. So we can rewrite this as 60. Well, let's start with f of x is equal to 60x plus 100. They have a more algebraic approach of doing it, but I like this method a little more. I think it's a little more digestible. So if there are any questions about this, feel free to let me know. We'll recap what we got. So make sure to be thorough and do what I didn't, which is be thorough. So we calculated the hourly rate for every hour after the first hour, but we also have to offset the initial cost based on the difference between our first 2 hours, the hourly rate for the first 2 hours, which is 110 per hour, which we got from dividing 210 by 2, and then we have to account for what the difference is for the initial cost for those first 2 hours. So 50 hours times 2 gives us 100. So that is our, what you could call our initial cost. If we want to keep this same linear function, because basically we have two functions where f of x is equal to 110x for this as long as n is between 0 and 2 hours, and then f of x is equal to 60x when n is greater than or equal to 2. So we have to somehow combine these into one function when n is greater than or equal to 2. And this is our method of doing that. Because if you notice, if you replace x with 2, you're going to get 220. But if you replace it with 1, you're going to get 160, which doesn't quite make sense. So that's where this specification that x is greater than or equal to 2 comes in. And if you put 0, where you're going to get charged $100 for nothing, that's why they specify that x is greater than or equal to 2. So this function only works if your charge is greater than or equal to 2. If the number of hours that you're being charged for, rather, is greater than or equal to 2. If there are no questions, I will check the folder that we have for our live homework help uploads. Nothing so far. So Hector used a tool called an auger to remove corn from a storage bin at a constant rate. This word constant rate, to me, indicates that we have some linear function. The bin contained 20,000 bushels of corn when Hector began to use the auger. After 5 hours of using the auger, 19,350 bushels of corn remained in the bin. If the auger continues to remove corn at this rate, what is the total number of hours Hector will have been using the auger when 12,840 bushels of corn remain in the bin? So key thing here is recognizing that we have an ordered pair 0 hours to 24,000 bushels of corn, and then after 5 hours we have 19,350 bushels. So we can calculate the constant rate by taking y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this will be 24,000 minus 19,350 over 5 minus 0, which will give us 4,650 over 5, which will then give us 930. So our hourly rate is 930 bushels of corn per hour. So y is equal to 930x, if y represents the number of bushels of corn. Although this question does not ask for the number of bushel of corns that he has removed, but rather how much. The question is specifying how much remains. So when 12,840 remains, so to get something that works in this function, we'll subtract 24,000 minus 12,840. That means that he's harvested 11,160 bushels of corn. So we just need to set this number, 11,160, equal to 930x, the rate at which Hector removes corn. And then solving for x by dividing on both sides by 930 will give us 12. Yeah, I think so. Yes, 12. Because 9,300 plus 1,860 gives us 11,160. Yes. So, if there are any questions about this, feel free to ask. But In other words, it takes him 12 hours. It will take him 12 hours until 12,840 bushels of corn remain in the bin. Now we could have also written a function for how much remains in the bin if we wanted to. We would just have to do 24,000 minus something we'll call y, which is the number, well, I'll call it r for remain. So the amount of corn that remains, 24,000 minus r, is equal to what we had before, 930x, and then solve for r. So that would be 24,000 minus 930x, and that would be, then we could plug in 12,840 into here and solve for x, and we would get the same result. Ultimately, you'll end up subtracting 24,000 by 12,840 anyway, but if you wanted to put it in equation form, that is how you would do it. Let me check to see if we have any homework help questions. We do not. So we'll scroll down. The function h is defined by h of x is equal to 4x plus 28. The graph of y equals hx in the xy plane has an x-intercept at a0 and a y-intercept at 0b. Where a and b are constants, what is the value of a plus b? Key thing here is recognizing that, like the problem specifies, the x-intercept occurs when y is 0, or h of x is 0. So, let me increase the thickness a little bit. H of x is equal to 4x plus 28. So let's first find a. When y, or h of x equals 0, we want to solve for x. So solving for x, first we got to subtract 28 from both sides. We get negative 28 is equal to 4x. X is therefore, if we divide by 4 on both sides, equal to negative 7. Let me make that clear. Negative 7. X is equal to negative 7, which is a. So x equals negative 7. This value is for a. Next, we want to solve for h of x when x equals 0. So h of x is going to be equal to 4 times 0 plus 28. So this result, 4 times 0 is just 0, so h of x is equal to 28. This value is b, this 28. So we said that a is equal to negative 7, b is equal to 28. Therefore, a plus b is just negative 7 plus 28, which is equal to 21. So a would be your correct response. Okay. So next, we have 4x minus 28 is equal to negative 24. What is the value of x minus 7? There's a few ways that we could do this. Either we could solve for x and substitute in the expression, or we could realize that 4x minus 28, they have a greatest common factor of 4 and 28, have a greatest common factor of 4. So we can factor out 4, get x minus 7 is equal to negative 24, and divide by 4 on both sides to get that x minus 7 is equal to negative, oops, let me close this. X minus 7 is just equal to negative 6. But if we were going to do it the other way, here's how we would do it. 4x minus 28 is equal to negative 24. 4x, add 28 on both sides. 4x is therefore equal to 20, it's not, sorry, to 4x divided by both sides, divided by 4 on both sides, we get that x is equal to 1, and therefore x minus 7 is equal to 1 minus 7, which is equal to 6, negative 6. That's how you do it the other way. If there are no questions on this one, we'll move on to the next one. For line H, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y. Line K is the result of translating line H down 5 units in the xy plane. What is the x-intercept of line K? So to do this, we're going to have to come up with an equation of y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, for this line H. We can take any 2 points to be y2 and x2 and y1 and x1. So let's just choose 23, 160 to be x2, y2, and 18, 130 to be x1, y1. Now remember, it doesn't really matter how you choose these points, you'll get the same answer in the end. So 160 minus 130 over 23 minus 18 gives us 30 over 5. That means that the slope of this line is 6, because 30 divided by 5 is 6. Now we just have to figure out the y-intercept. So then, y, we can choose any points to be y and x. So we'll do 130 for y, taken from the table, and then 6 times 18, all plus b. 6 times 18 is 108. So 130 is equal to 108 plus b. Subtract 108 from both sides, minus 108. b is therefore equal to 22. So our full equation is y is equal to 6x plus 22. Now they tell us that the that the line K is the result of translating line H down 5 units in the xy plane. So we do y is equal to 6x plus 22, and then we're going to subtract 5, minus 5 to translate this down 5 units. We get that y for line K, and I'll even call this k of x, is equal to 6x, 22 minus 5 is 17, so plus 17. And so to calculate the x-intercept of line K, we just have to set k of x equal to 0 and solve for x. So then, subtracting 17 on both sides gives us negative 17 is equal to 6x. And then dividing by 6 on both sides gets us that negative 17 over x is equal to, negative 17 over 6 is equal to x, 2x. So our x-intercept would occur at negative 17 over 6, comma 0. Because the x-intercept always occurs when y equals 0. And this would be your answer. If there are no questions on that, I'll check our shared folder to make sure that nobody has posted anything. Well, unfortunately, I do have something to do in a few, like about half an hour, and I haven't eaten today, so I gotta eat before I do that. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me. I'm gonna go ahead and end our homework help stream. Thank you all so much for joining me. Hope you all have a lovely